Aquí estamos con el panel sobre la integración de los Balcanes en la Unión Europea. Como sabéis, es uno de los asuntos más importantes si hablamos del futuro de Europa. Como sabéis, estas jornadas, el campus FAES está dentro de las jornadas Hablamos de Europa, financiadas por el Ministerio de Exteriores de España. Ahora voy a pasar a inglés, porque como sabéis, esa mesa redonda se va a desarrollar en inglés y today we will talk, as I said, about the European integration with or without the Balkans. It is a topic which is now currently is not in the center of the focus of the European policy, but should be. And one of the reasons to organize this roundtable is to put it again in the focus of the European Union. Why? For many reasons. One of them is also that during the crisis caused by the COVID-19, China and Russia, through their mass diplomacy and vaccine diplomacy, have presented themselves as the countries that have provided the greatest support to the countries of the Western Balkans. The European Union, although a very active player in the region, has remained in the shadows of the propaganda of these two actors. The region has become the scene of competition among the great powers, the United States, the European Union, China, Russia, Turkey, and increasingly present through infrastructure investments, the Persian Gulf countries. What should be the EU strategy in the Balkans? What is the perspective of the integration of these countries into the European Union? Are some of the most important questions to be discussed in this panel. And for that, we really count with an extraordinary panelist. We will start with Ivan Vejvoda. He is and he was many things. I will just mention two of them. Now, currently, he is acting rector of the Institute for Human Sciences in Viena, and also he was senior vice president for programs at the German Marshall Fund in Washington. So, Ivan, thank you very much to be here with us today. Welcome virtually to Madrid, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mira. Thank you to FAES for this invitation and to give us the opportunity. And I'm very happy and honored to be with my colleagues, Vesko, Gracevic, and Oliver Krliu. Well, first of all, I think it's very important to keep the Balkans in focus. We know that there is so-called fatigue with enlargement. The geopolitical situation in the world has dramatically changed in so many ways. We won't go into that. That's not our subject. But that means that there is less focus on this region, which remains, as I like to say it, the last unintegrated part of core geographic Europe. You look at the map and you understand what that means. And on the positive side, the European Union has never reneged on the strategy that it put forward now 18 years ago at the Thessaloniki summit in June 2003, when all of the Western Balkan countries were invited to join, provided, of course, they met the criteria and on a merit-based process to become members. That strategy and that goal has been repeated endlessly. Where there is noise in the system is in the individual member states, who have at times and others openly or secretly blocked the advancement of the countries towards European accession. And I must say, unfortunately, given that I'm a Francophile and a Francophone and studied in France, what France did in 2019, blocking North Macedonia of moving forward, was one of the most dramatically negative acts that a member state of the European Union could have done, especially since it's such an important country. We know that the Franco-German engine and couple are the drivers of Europe, whether one wants to recognize it or not. And I think that opens space for a member state, Bulgaria, the neighbor of North Macedonia, to do the same thing. And basically, you know, whether one likes it or not, they were allowed to do that, because if we imagine that France had allowed North Macedonia and Albania to move forward, I don't think Bulgaria would have blocked North Macedonia back in October 2019. Just to give a flavor of the situation and of the divergent forces that relate to the accession process of the Western Balkans. In fact, just this morning, there was a panel, a European panel on your same subject by the countries of the Weimar Triangle. France, Germany, and Poland were discussing, can the Weimar Triangle help the accession of the Western Balkans? And there's a paper that they published, which I can share later on, and maybe you can distribute to look at that. The other element that is not helping at the moment is the way that the European Union itself, within its member states, is not dealing with the democratic backsliding or regression, with the questions of rule of law in Hungary and in Poland. And I think that is not a good example to the acceding member states. It gives them space to do a certain number of things because we see that the European itself is not dealing with member states' problems that are within it. And that means that we have authoritarian tendencies in these countries that are similar to what we're seeing actually in Hungary and Poland. And there must be a way in which the European Union, slow as it is, achieves the goal of tackling this value institutional issue that is democracy, to put it very simply. And of course, the European Union is slowly addressing that issue as we go forward. The other thing that I think is important to mention is that regardless of the activities of a Russia and a China, there has been a wake-up call, a wake-up moment in the European Union and in the United States that they need to be more present and to beef up their presence. Ursula von der Leyen, the head of the Commission, announced a visit to the Balkans. When President Vučić was in Brussels, they announced an upgrading of the train between Belgrade and Skopje to bringing it up to higher speeds. This is all part of the connectivity agenda of the European Union, and apparently she's going to sign a contract worth many billions for the upgrading of this. These are already reactions to the Chinese investments that you mentioned, to the nefarious influence of various Russian activities. There will be a summit, as you know, under the Slovenian presidency in Brdo kod Kranja on the 16th of October. That will be devoted to the Western Balkans with all the leaders of the European Union. So again, it demonstrates that they are not losing it. It's not dropping off the agenda, but continually there. Without wanting to go on too long, I will mention two things. And just to go for a second back to the Bulgarian blockage of Macedonia, you may have seen that EU Commissioner Varhelyi was in Sofia meeting with the president of Romania, Rumen Radev. He tweeted about this, but it was indicative that there was no press conference after their meeting, which means that Bulgaria will continue to block. I don't know whether the Brdo kod Kranj summit will be able to do something about it. But the quicker that North Macedonia and Albania can move forward, the more important it is, because this is ultimately about the credibility of the European Union as a peace project, as a project of bringing the countries of Europe together, and of course showing third actor countries that it is relevant. Two things to end up on. One is and we'll probably come back to this in the discussion, the what used to be called Mini Schengen, now officially called the Open Balkan Initiative, that is led by North Macedonia, Albania, and Serbia to facilitate movement and trade and commerce, which is very positive. I traveled through all of these countries this summer, and literally I used my identity card in all of these countries, and there was absolutely no problem in crossing borders. Of course, it's more relevant for trade, so the trucks don't spend 2 days on borders but can move forward. There has been opposition to this in Kosovo, in Montenegro to a certain level, although my prediction is that Montenegro might be the first to join. I don't know when, Vesko might more know, and then Bosnia and Herzegovina. It is important, if this is to succeed, that these countries join. And to state the obvious for me, this is not a substitute for European integration. This is something that the countries can do to demonstrate that they are working in a European spirit and to address some of the issues that they will have as member states while the process of accession is ongoing. None of these countries will exceed very quickly, to put it mildly, at the most optimistic levels in 7-8 years time, maybe. And so they cannot just wait and do nothing about it. Last but not least, the role of the United States, absolutely crucial, continues to be crucial. They have supported, for example, the Open Balkan Initiative. They are present in the Serbia-Kosovo discussion. We can come back to that because there are tensions, as you know, on the border in the past 2 days. And the naming of Matt Palmer, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State, to be the person overlooking the reform of elections in Bosnia and Herzegovina, I think is a positive move, somewhat unusual for the American administration. But I would say any attention paid to the Balkans is welcome from whichever quarter it's coming to. And of course, the synchronicity of US and EU positions is fundamental for the whole region. And I would say the US is sometimes more in advance when you look at the sanctions policies, the putting on the sanctions list of former Albanian Prime Minister Sali Berisha, or 3 Bulgarian tycoons, Peevski, or announcing, of course, in the State Department announcement that they will be looking very carefully whether elected leaders are respecting decisions of international courts, of international agreements, and of course, fighting against corruption.
Ivan, thank you very much. And we, as you said, we will probably discuss a lot of things that you has already mentioned, but before it, I will give the floor to Vesko Gracevic. He's an ex-ambassador of Montenegro, and currently he's professor of Boston University, and I really would like to give him a lot of thanks because he's here with us. In Boston is like 7 a.m. In the morning. So Vesko, thank you very much, and very welcome to Madrid virtually.
Thank you, Mira. Thank you for the invitation. I'm really honored to be with you and guest panelists. I'm also thankful to FAES for inviting me. Hopefully, I won't be sleepy and I will not miss something important to say. I would say that my intervention will be I would say in terms of the approach and angle, similar to what Ivan has said, maybe when it comes to tone and intonation, but how to say, a bit more critical about the European Union. So I agree that, since the EU Western Balkans Summit, I think Thessaloniki, since this European Union agenda was introduced now almost 20 years ago, the European Union membership perspective serves as like an incentive for Balkans countries, Western Balkans countries, but at that time even for other Balkans countries. So, and it was a catalyst for democratic transformation of the region. But it is what we are missing right now in the region. In my view, it's a myth that democratic transformation leads to happy ending. Most countries, and we are witnessing this right now in the region, if not supported continuously, are stuck in the middle. 20 years have already passed, almost passed, and as Ivan rightly said, and so, but I won't be such optimist as he. I think that we are currently somewhere distant to the membership as the country of the region were back in time in 2003. So many of them feel this hammer on a wheel effect. They think that they did some reforms in the meantime, but membership seems to be, how to say, long shot, and the journey is getting longer and longer. And the EU is not offering any refreshment on the way to the EU, no incentives given to countries when they achieve a certain level of integration to the European Union to present to their citizens that their how to say, advancement has been acknowledged by Brussels. Examples mentioned by Ivan, like North Macedonia and Albania, are obvious. Those two countries have delivered what European Union asked them to do. They are blocked by other member states, which is not a good signal for the region as a whole. Another case is Bosnia and Herzegovina, and I think that the process should be unblocked for country to get a chance to begin accession negotiation talks with the European Union. So this how to say, atmosphere is healthy, I have to say, for other ideas and policies to grow, or policies that we associate with the 90s and 80s, and we can policies which can be described as raise on nationalism, populist policy, then hegemonic aspirations of certain countries, and so on. I would say that, you know, then it is obvious, since Ivan also mentioned how the US has recently appointed 2 envoys for the Balkans. If we see what the scope of work of European envoy for the Balkan is, then it's obvious that priority of European Union when it comes to our region is the Belgrade-Pristina dialogue, because the Miroslav Lajčák is the special envoy for the Balkans, and his title is, first of all, representative for the Belgrade-Pristina dialogue and other Western Balkan regional issues. So besides the dialogue, be honest, his involvement in other regional issues is marginal. So in the meantime, as I said, and even also mentioned, European US has appointed 2 envoys to deal with the region. And I also hope that Brussels and Washington will work in synergy in the years to come, because that synergy is needed. And it is also what we were missing in the previous American administration. There are a high expectation back in the region that the European Union and the US will come back together and work together in the region. So that atmosphere, the situation, environment that I briefly described, contributed to the reform fatigue in the region. And that reform fatigue mirrors enlargement fatigue in the European Union. So none of the sides is in this moment interested to make a breakthrough. I don't speaking about some let's say enthusiasts who in the region try to do their best to push reforms forward. But if you look at the political elites currently, they don't see goal ahead. And as I already mentioned, their efforts have not been recognized as it was the case in North Macedonia and Albania. So to make a final point at this during my first intervention, I think what is needed now is a new enlargement methodology. European Union has adopted its methodology several times so far, But in my view, this current methodology is not working. And the enlargement is maybe not dead, but is nearing dead end. And it is like in a deep hibernation. So in my view, the EU needs to overhaul the enlargement process and to introduce incentives to the aspiring countries. In my view, there are several step approach or incremental gradual enlargement can be a solution. We don't have time now to discuss that in more detail, but countries may, if they meet criteria, and when they meet criteria in certain areas, they may be allowed to enter to be more integrated European Union. For example, in economic sphere, which then meets interests both European member states and countries from the region. And that will also, this new approach will also, satisfy those countries in European Union who are very critical about the lack of progress in other areas like rule of law, home affairs, and so on and so forth. So we will give something to the region to incentivize the process, but we will also satisfy those who insist on, on strong record on human rights, on rule of law, and home affairs. I will stop here, and hopefully I didn't go over the time, and ready to discuss other issues with you. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you very much, Vesko. I'm sure that we will back to some of points which you mentioned. Now I would like to give a floor to Oliver Krliu. He's current ambassador of North Macedonia and Spain. So thank you very much to be here with us. And please, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mira. Thank you and FAES for the invitation and the opportunity to participate in this discussion on a topic that is without any doubt the most pressing, one of the most pressing issues for the region and the Republic of North Macedonia these days. My dear friend Ivan Vejvoda and Ambassador Gracevic have already covered many aspects of the issue at hand. So let me try to briefly add my 2 cents worth to the discussion while trying to be the voice of the region in this discussion. First of all, we in the Balkans sincerely believe that Europe cannot be fully united without a region that is within its borders, completely surrounded by EU member states. And I'm certain that it's the view of all EU member states that this region is indeed an integral part of Europe. Our geography, our history is part of Europe. And we are not only surrounded by EU member states, but we also share the same economic interests. We trade with the EU, we have large European foreign direct investments. We also share the same security concerns with the rest of the EU. So it's fair to conclude that both the Western Balkans and the EU will be better off if the EU flag covers this region as well. As my friend said, in Thessaloniki in 2003, some 18 years ago, the EU made a promise to the people of the Balkans that their future lies in the EU. Furthermore, the region's clear EU perspective was fully and unambiguously reaffirmed by the EU Council, Commission, the European Parliament at regular intervals. Why? It's simple, because integrating the Western Balkans is clearly in the EU political, security, and economic interest as a geostrategic investment in a stable and thriving union. Furthermore, we must be aware that the demographic effect of this integration would be far smaller than the one of the previous enlargement processes. The region, for example, the region's GDP is less than 1%, and its population is just around 4% of those of the EU. On the other hand, the geopolitical benefits for the EU are without any doubt significant. Also, the unification of the continent has become a political imperative for the EU, reaffirming the strength of the European project, demonstrating the EU's ability to shape its continent around its values and standards, strengthening the EU's strategic autonomy and presence, and preserving EU's immediate neighborhood from opposing external influences are without any doubt key geopolitical priorities. Still, We have to acknowledge that despite the steadfast commitment to EU integration and the exceptional level of EU financial and economic support, today the people in the region are experiencing a sense of disappointment in the enlargement process. The perception in the Western Balkans, I believe, is that the prospect of accession is receding and that the EU aspirations are lost under a complex set of conditions and procedures. Still, despite this perception, the public opinion across the region is still largely in favor of EU accession. But it must be noted that the perceived absence of progress in the EU integration process, the danger of exclusionary nationalistic rhetoric and politics is really regaining momentum. Also, when the EU is not actively and visibly present or engaged, for that matter, in the region, the political space of the region is in danger of being influenced by those who have different or often competing interests to those of the EU. The countries of the Western Balkans, from their side, are clear in their aim to become full-fledged EU members. They do not want, as my friends already mentioned, to settle for any kind of enhanced economic, trade, and financial cooperation only. Any suggestion of an alternative path is perceived as an unhelpful distraction from the intense work as their political, social, economic systems are being transformed. We in the region are well aware of that full membership requires efficient political and economic governments, higher standards of adherence to the rule of law, etc., and we are focused on fulfilling our part of the bargain. On behalf of the EU, we believe it's important to sustain the highest level of political engagement with the region so that the benefits of the process can be progressively felt and incentives remain visible. Must say that the EU hasn't shied away from supporting our reform path, but the missing part of the consensus among member states to allow candidates to move forward when objective criteria are fulfilled is what is missing, really. There were instances when this wasn't done because of subjective or bilateral reason, as mentioned earlier. That's why now the new methodology provides a chance for a fresh start or a restart. But we believe it needs to be proven, for instance, on the example of North Macedonia and Albania. The word that I believe should stick out is credibility and abiding by the share of the accepted commitments and obligation by both sides, both the EU as well as the candidate countries. In that regard, the case of North Macedonia is particularly indicative. We are the country that has waited the longest. We signed the association agreement, after Slovenia and before Croatia, both countries member states for a while now. When we became a candidate country, that meant starting accession talks rather quick, but not in our case. When the Commission recommended that we are ready to start the journey for the first time in 2009, some 12 years ago, the Council usually immediately followed. But again, not in our case. We have a political decision of all member states of March last year, without any additional precondition attached, that we should start accession negotiation talks. Still, this did not translate into reality. So our case, and coincidentally the case of Albania, is a test whether the EU perspective, the promise of Thessaloniki 2003, reiterated in Sofia in May 2018, still stands. But we are moving in the right direction. Last year, we became members of NATO, and we want to be, of course, a dynamic European democracy with a prosperous economy. We have invested time, implemented extensive reforms, shown commitment and determination in solving difficult problems, and built our democracy. You all well know that we also solved a long-standing and difficult bilateral issue with our Greek friends, at that time considered as the last obstacle to our well-deserved Euro-Atlantic integration. Regretfully, as mentioned earlier, since the end of 2019, our neighbor Bulgaria is effectively blocking the start of our EU accession talks by conditioning it with our acceptance of a number of demands, some of them not entirely in line with European values. will not get into the details of the demands, the history, identity, language, other aspects of the issue, because it will probably consume the remaining of the time Mira has envisaged for this event. I'll just say that despite the obvious disappointment, we in North Macedonia are doing everything we can to overcome this obstacle. We were and are intensively engaged in bilateral political dialogue with Bulgaria, initiating confidence-building measures to alleviate Bulgaria's concern. But so far, as you well know, without success. At the same time, we accepted all EU presidency proposals presented over the last year, first by previous German and Portuguese presidencies, and continued by the current Slovenian presidency, that offered a well-balanced solution based on the international and European standard and practices as a solid base for finding a compromise and enabling Bulgaria to join the consensus for adopting the negotiation framework and starting of our accession talks. Unfortunately, due to the current political situation in Bulgaria and the fact that after the 2 parliamentary elections held this year, they failed to produce a working coalition government and new elections are called for November 14. We, and for that matter, the EU, practically do not have a political counterpart to talk to in Sofia. So that's the situation that we found ourselves now. All the other EU members, without exception, have unequivocally stated that my country, as well as Albania, should start the accession talks. But due to the consensus rule for such decision, looks like we, or for that matter, the EU, cannot move forward. There's no guarantee that even after the 3rd elections in Bulgaria, a coalition government will be formed, which may indefinitely prolong our well-deserved start of accession negotiation, and which will finally result with a significant disappointment, not only among citizens of North Macedonia, but of the Western Balkans as a whole. We initially thought that the EU Western Balkans Summit in October in Slovenia will be an excellent opportunity to, among other things, announce or celebrate the operational start of our accession negotiation. Unfortunately for both of us, for the region and for the EU, this opportunity will likely also be missed. So I'll stop here and we can continue with the other issues after that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think that all of you are here in some way, voices of the region. All of us were born in the former Yugoslavia, so we know the region and we know what are the main problems. And in 1 hour, I'm sure that we cannot address all of them. But maybe what I can say, it's here even mentioned the among other things, the fatigue of Europe, and Vesko and Oliver also talk about the disappointment of the countries of the region, and Vesko even said that the European Union needs new enlargement methodology, because the old one does not works. So my first question is, and there is European fatigue, but also I think that there is the Balkan fatigues. We can say that, of course, that there is disappointment, there are a lot of obstacles, but let's focus on the region itself, because the European Union is what it is. So my first question for all of you is, from your point of view, what are at least the 3 most serious problems in the Balkans? Problems which are, of course, obstacles for this long journey to arrive to the European Union, but also the 3 most, the biggest problem for inside relationship among the countries. Let's start with Ivan, please.
Well, thank you, Mira. That gives all of us an opportunity to say more, and this is clearly one of the things that is most important, and that I didn't say at the beginning. The responsibility for the slowness is, especially in my country, Serbia, for not doing enough on democratic reforms, not fulfilling the criteria on rule of law, on chapters 23 and 24, home affairs, democratizing the political culture, and in my view, that is 90% of the work of the accession. Of course, we need a little help from our friends in Europe. We need the support. Of course, we're all dependent on trade with the European Union, and mostly with countries like Germany, Italy, and the rest. About 65 to 70% of our trade is with Europe, and these are all important things. But if we're not serious about democratizing our countries and creating a democratic political culture, then there's no reason for Europe to want us to become members. And Europe is looking at the way that we're advancing. And those who are very negative about EU accession in Europe are saying, well, look, if this was possible, this democratic regression was possible in Poland and Hungary, that were really the poster child successes of democratic transition in the 90s, then we do not want countries where this would be possible as well, or who are not ready. That's the kind of perception and image that we are up against. And then you add to that not enough is being done in some of our countries. I agree that North Macedonia has done a lot. In Albania, the judicial reform has been very serious, but there's still a perception of state capture, to overgeneralize. In fact, the European Union paper of February 2018, I believe, in its introduction said all countries suffer from state capture and high levels of corruption. So addressing those three things, one is democratic reform, continued democratic reform, making institutions truly independent, having checks and balances in the parliamentary system. In Serbia, we don't have a parliament that's worth its name because there's no opposition in it. It's what it is. It's a parliament of the ruling party. And then tackling corruption and crime. There are things that are being done. I mean, the capture of 1.5 tons of cocaine now in Montenegro, or the arrest of this mafia group in Serbia. It's not that nothing is being done, but not enough is being done. And I think that is being followed very carefully. It's important to note for people who don't follow our region that the presence of foreign intelligence agencies working against organized crime is there. So the American Department, the Drug Enforcement Agency, the famous DEA, is in all of our countries working with some of our police forces, European, of course, Europol and others. So we are in a certain sense integrated, but these are all, they're not secondary, I was going to say, or peripheral, they're important, but the key thing is really the democratization process that is looking at, and there not enough has been done. And I would say that I mentioned the wake-up call that happened in Europe regarding, the presence of China. I think we need to have more presence of European leaders coming, and American leaders for that matter. Yes, they're occupied with other things, but there needs to be a sentiment that attention is being paid, and that's why, for example, the visit of Ursula von der Leyen will be important. And of course, we need to mention Angela Merkel's farewell visit to the region, to Belgrade and Tirana, which was important. Any visit is important.
Thank you, Ivan. Vesko, what do you think? What is the main problem of these countries' problems?
I will outline three issues in my view. I will begin with what Ivan said. That for sure, the lack of reforms is one of the issues. but I would, how to say, look at it from a slightly different angle. I don't think that countries from the region are only to be blamed. You know, when in 2003, the Saloniki Agenda was put in place, then both sides of that equation assume certain responsibilities. All countries to deliver and to embark on democratic reforms, the European Union to be continuously present and to support those reforms. I don't think that both sides in the recent time lately are doing what they are expected to do or what they promised to do back in 2003. You know, when the perspective was really there in the first decade of 21st century, we witnessed in the region, how to say, promising signs of democratic transformation. When this perspective is missing, then we are witnessing regression. The regression is what we are missing here now. I agree with Ivan that what we need is more, we need from the European Union and US political commitment, not just technical process going on, political commitment. We need more visits, we need more presence, something like, you know, as you mentioned, visits or, okay, last night, Western Balkans leaders had a dinner with Joseph Borrell, but more of that type of, how to say, pushing from all Western partners, because this is the only way to, you know, counterbalance transactional models which are promoted by China or Russia, and which are very, how to say, resonates well with our mindset and the way how people from the Balkans do business. What, how to say, let me be very frank, what I didn't find, for example, healthy for the region is not the fact that Prime Minister of Austria visited Belgrade lately, but his statement that he is impressed with progress made by Serbia in European integration process, that is not received well anywhere outside of Serbia. So first thing, lack of reforms. Second or the third altogether, I think, but everything is interconnected, is historic revisionism in the region, and that aspirations, some aspirations, hegemonic aspirations are back, and they remain unchecked by European Union and the US. US must be clear on it, that the US and European Union will not tolerate historic revisionism and some idea of creation of either Serbian world or that world or not that world. You know, even rightly emphasize the importance of visa-free regime and connectivity between the region, within countries in the region. I would say, at least when it comes to Montenegro and Kosovo, the problem is not the idea, but the author. The author and who sit and that the idea coincides with promotion of so-called Serbian world by some representatives in Serbian government. So to sum up, you know, more political presence is needed to push for the reforms that were stuck, you know, and otherwise other actors will walk in. They were already in there.
Thank you, Vesko. Oliver, please, your thoughts.
Thank you. I believe I already covered some of the issues during my opening speech, but I can also say that I completely associate myself with what Ivan and Vesko were saying regarding the necessity of the presence both of the EU and the United States, enhanced presence in the region, and substantial. But I believe that the presence of as I mentioned, visits, aside from the Commissioner Verhely's visit, which is happening right now, by the end of the month, the President of the Commission, von der Leyen, is going to visit the region. And then we have the Western Balkan Summit with EU Western Balkan Summit that will also gather all the important figures of the EU in the region. On the issue of the countries being ready, I can only speak about my country, North Macedonia. The sole fact that we are that there is a decision of the Commission that we should be invited for the start of the negotiation is a testimony that we have done what was expected for us. By no means we believe that we are, of course, ready to join the Union. That will happen down the way, 7, 8, 10 years from now. But we need to be, we're just asking to be put on the right path to continue with what we are doing, and what we were doing so far has been lauded by the Union. In regard to the enlargement methodology, we believe that it has built-in elements of acceleration, early integration, the new methodology. Basically, on the issue whether it's fair for the countries that already started the process to be imposed a new methodology, that's a different issue. They should address it. But when this issue was mentioned or discussed, I mean, our reaction was, bring it on. Just tell us what you want us to do, since we are starting from scratch, and we will do it. Whatever, we want to become members of the club. So whatever you guys think that we should do, we are more than willing to do in order to adjust our society to the European standard. So I guess the most important, as my friends already mentioned, is continued focus, not only by the EU, and demonstration of a continued focus, not only by the EU, but also by the United States. And one of the issues for that, one of the opportunity for that is the summit in Brdo next month. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I want to back now to Vesko, because we agree, all of us agree that that the lack of reforms, democratic reforms, are one of the main reasons why is the journey to the EU is so slowly. But Vesko also mentioned historical revisionism. And when we talk about the Balkans, always we not always, but in most of the cases, we have to think about the wars. We have to think about the nationalism. It's the part of all these discourses about the Balkans. So, Vesko, when you mention historical revisionism and taking account the continuous almost tensions between Serbia and Kosovo, and the tensions inside of the Bosnia and Herzegovina, do you think that it is possible to have again wars in this region? It's pessimistic question, I know, but I agree that there is historical revisionism. But please, your opinion about it.
I would like to sound like a concerned optimist, which means I don't think that hopefully war will happen. I would like to believe that people are tired of it, but there are some who are not tired, and who think that maybe redrawing maps in the region is still possible. You mentioned, I will be frank, surprising for me is that current presidency of the European Union in March submitted a non-paper that proposed it. This is not, in my view, a single accidental event. I believe, and I'm confident, that there are people in Europe who would support that idea if they think this idea or this type of solution would lead to, let's call it, lasting peace in the region. But what I don't like seeing right now, and it's a complex picture, what I don't like seeing right now is, as I said, historic revisionism and promotion of narratives that I associate with the late 80s and early 90s and 90s and policies that made possible for Yugoslavia to cease to exist, but not just to cease to exist, but actually cause the bloody war in our country. You know, it's not just important to remember what happened, but memory is as important as historical facts. If you want to remold memory to, you know, which I think is trying some trying to do with new narratives to present things differently, to negate genocide, to deny genocide in Srebrenica, for example, or so on and so forth. This opens space for nationalism to grow, and then you can see nationalism almost in every corner. Nobody is immune, you know, and it's like a chain reaction. But in that play, in my view, the strongest thing that they're gonna be. So the strongest part, the strongest party, the strongest country, thinks that this will help them, you know, redeem something or get something back in return. One final point, frankly speaking, I'm not sure whether I'm right, because I'm now more focused. I'm here in the US. I think that people like Ivan and Oliver know it better because they are in Europe. But many believe that if a deal is possible between Kosovo and Serbia, then Serbia needs to get something in return as a compensation. And that worries many of us who are small nations in the Balkans.
Thank you, Vesko. I just remember then after the appearance of non-official papers of the Slovenian presidency, I read an interview with Ivan, who really explained it in a very common sense way. So Ivan, please, your comments about the historical revisionism, possibility, maybe probability of war, and above all on the question on Serbia and Kosovo. It is elephant in the room, it is clear.
Yeah. Well, on the war, I'm on record of saying that there won't be a war in the Balkans. I wrote a paper for the Munich Security Conference 4 years ago with that title, or 5 years ago. I agree with Vesko. My view is simply that we did war, unfortunately, in the 90s, and there is absolutely no stamina. No one has the stomach to go into a war. First of all, people, you know, civilians don't want it, and leaders know what the price is at this point. And of course, we have NATO in our territories, in Kosovo, in Bosnia, and very positively, thank God, 3 countries are already full members of NATO: Montenegro, Albania, and North Macedonia now. And Serbia has very developed relations with NATO through the IPAP, Individual Partnership Action Plan, and as I and others keep repeating, there are more military exercises. There was one just the other day with American military than with any other military, but it doesn't get that much publicity. Absolutely, there are attempts at revisionism all over the place. There is this very, very negative, nefarious, and Vesko mentioned it, this talk about a Serbian world. You know, one simply nods one head in disbelief that things are being said like that. This is clearly being used for politically instrumental reasons to keep nationalists on board in a kind of catch-all party system. But that's no excuse for instead of calming the situation, reaching out to each other, being each other's champions. In EU enlargement, we have the heightening of tensions. That's the way, unfortunately, politics works in various countries, and here too. And what's happening on the Kosovo-Serbian border is part of that. This will blow over, it will stop, but it's a way to mobilize people around one's own, leadership. Kosovo is going to have local elections. We're looking at elections in Serbia next year. So that's definitely something. So the whole work, I mean, apart from revisionism, the other important word is reconciliation. Things have been done in these 20 years, but again, because of the revisionism, the reconciliation is on the back burner. Definitely not has been done on the search for missing persons. There are attempts, there are important things that are being done in the background, but much more definitely needs to be done in that direction. So we are in a situation where, and I agree with Vesko, and I always tend to be more critical towards ourselves. What do we need to do? How can we help ourselves so that others can help us? But the European Union has done many mistakes and has not done enough to push in a number of directions, using its leverage, using its conditionality, and understanding that it is in its geopolitical interest not only to have stable countries or to support stabilocracy, but that stability is much stronger if we have democratic countries. And in that regard, the European Union, I think, needs to do much more, even though it's occupied with many other things. And of course, we have German elections coming, so we'll see, how that plays into the future EU policy. Macron has gotten more engaged. He received the leaders of Kosovo and Serbia during the summer, I think that there's a desire to do more, but we'll see. They also have elections coming, so that's an impediment always in these longer-term processes.
Because we are democratic countries, that is a good. I know in which sense you have been talking about it. Oliver, we only have 3 minutes. Please just said your opinion about. Maybe it's too short time. Maybe just.
I will be brief. Yes.
Yeah, please.
I will be brief. I completely agree with Ivan, and in general with Ambassador Vesko. But I will state clearly our attitude. Any kind of historical revision in the Balkans, and God forbid, the revision of borders, will be opening of a Pandora's box, of a can of worms, or you can use any metaphor you like. It will be it will have catastrophic let's say catastrophic results or consequences in the region. To talk about historical revision at this day and age, I don't think is helpful at all. And I agree, this is a thing of this moment. It will pass, and we are all democratic countries with the same goals, same wish to join the Euro-Atlantic community. So these talks should really stop and be condemned by everybody involved. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I think that this final statement that all of these countries would like to be members of NATO and the European Union are good to put the end of this panel. Thank you very much to be here. I know that 1 hour is a really short time for such a big region and such different countries. So I hope that next year we will see in Madrid face to face, and have a nice day, and thank you again.
Inshallah.
Thank you, Mira.
Bye.
Thank you, Mira.
In Madrid next year.
Bye to everybody. Bye bye.
Thank you, Oliver. Thank you, Ivan. Thank you, Mira.
Ciao, Vesko. Ciao, Oliver.